when you bring up the Psalms, particularly the King James Version, the vibe can get very, well, very solemn. It feels like stained glass windows and, organ music, a little distant.
Yeah.
But we have this text in front of us today, Psalm 116, that feels less like a polished hymn and more like, I don't know, the audio recording from a black box after a plane crash.
That is a vivid way to put it. And honestly, it's pretty accurate. If you just strip away the formatting and look at the raw data in Psalm 116, you're not reading a theology textbook.
Huh.
You are reading a survival manual from someone who literally just walked out of a burning building.
And that's exactly what we're doing today. We are looking at this specific text, Psalm 116. We've pulled together, the historical context, linguistic notes, and some modern perspectives to figure out what is actually happening here.
Right.
The goal is to bridge that gap. We want to see how this ancient desperation, how it connects to the stuff we all deal with in, 2026.
And that bridge is much shorter than you might think. This isn't abstract philosophy. It's a deeply human experience.
It really is. And I want to jump right into the first line because it just sets the tone immediately. It doesn't start with, "Oh, God, you are great and powerful." It starts with a relationship status. Verse 1, "I love the Lord because he hath heard my voice and my supplications."
It's immediate intimacy, isn't it? But if you look closer at the grammar, it's reactive. The writer isn't loving God in a vacuum.
Okay.
The Hebrew structure there implies a completed action that birthed a current state. I love because he heard. The whole psalm is basically a reaction to a crisis that has just ended.
So to understand the love, we have to understand the crisis.
Exactly.
And this is where the text gets dark. I mean, surprisingly dark for what's called a song of thanksgiving. Look at verses 3 and 4. The writer says, "The sorrows of death compassed me, and the pains of hell gat hold upon me."
The pains of hell, that's not a phrase you use lightly.
It's heavy language. In modern English, we might say, "I went through hell," but we usually mean like a bad week at work or a breakup. Is that what's happening here, or is this more literal?
It's so much more visceral than a bad week. The word used in the original text is Sheol. And in that context, it's not just a place of punishment. It's the grave. It's the abyss.
Wow.
The writer describes being compassed, which means surrounded or encircled. Think of a hunter's snare just tightening around an animal's neck.
So it's claustrophobic. It's not just that they were sad, it's that they were trapped.
Extremely trapped. The sorrows of death aren't just an emotion. They're the actual cords of death tangling around him. This person felt that the end was inevitable. It's a moment of total suffocating panic.
Which I think is so important because we often sanitize these religious figures. We assume they just float through life on a cloud of perfect faith.
Right.
But this guy's reporting trouble and sorrow. He's admitting faith didn't stop the crisis from happening.
That's a critical observation. The source material is very clear on this. Faith is not an immunization against suffering. The psalmist is admitting, I was trapped. I was in agony.
Yeah.
If you've ever felt like the walls are closing in, physically, financially, mentally, you are in the exact same emotional space as this writer was thousands of years ago.
So the walls are closing in, the pains of hell are gripping him. And then we get the pivot in verse 4. "Then called I upon the name of the Lord."
And notice the timing. Then, not before.
Which implies he probably tried other things first, right?
Yeah.
Maybe he tried to fix it himself.
The implication is that he exhausted all his resources, he hit a wall, and look at the prayer itself. "O Lord, I beseech thee, deliver my soul."
It's incredibly short.
It's 4 words in Hebrew. Ana yu meleta nafshi.
That's it. No, thou art great. No long introduction.
That's it. There is no bargaining. There's no, "I promise to be good if you get me out of this." There is no resume listing his good deeds.
Yes.
It is a raw, guttural cry for help.
It reminds me of a 911 call. When your house is actually on fire or you're having a heart attack, your body enters this physiological state of tunnel vision. You lose your vocabulary. You don't call the operator and ask how their day is going. You don't make small talk. You just scream, "Help."
That's the perfect analogy. And the takeaway here is that efficiency matters in a crisis. The text is validating that God doesn't need the preamble. He hears the frequency of the distress, not just the vocabulary. He responds to the intent.
Because he hears the voice.
And the supplication. That word implies a request for favor, a begging for grace from a position of total need.
Which leads us to what the writer learns about God from this rescue. He gets pulled out of the fire. And then verse 5, he starts listing attributes. Gracious is the Lord and righteous, yea, our God is merciful. But then verse 6 throws me a bit of a curveball.
Verse 6 is one of the most profound lines in the whole book.
The Lord preserveth the simple.
I can almost hear you cringing a little.
Well, yeah. I mean, if I walked up to you and called you simple, we'd have a problem. In our culture, simple means unintelligent, means you don't get it. Is the psalmist insulting himself here?
Not at all. We have to kind of strip away the modern ego to understand this. In this context, the Hebrew word implies open. It refers to someone who lacks the guile or the cunning to defend themselves.
Okay.
Think of a small child who instinctively lifts their arms up when they want to be carried. They aren't plotting, they are just needing.
So it's the opposite of being cynical or calculating.
It's the opposite of being self-sufficient. The simple person here is the one who has realized, I cannot scheme my way out of this trap. I'm not smart enough or strong enough to beat death.
And the verse continues, I was brought low and he helped me. That phrasing seems to confirm it.
That is the definition of the simple dynamic. You have to be willing to be low to receive the help. If you're still standing tall, trying to fix it yourself, you aren't simple yet. You're still negotiating.
That's a tough pill to swallow for high achievers. We're taught to leverage our assets, to network, to hustle. This is saying the asset is helplessness.
The asset is dependency. And that dependency allows for a shift in the psalmist's internal world. Once he admits he's simple and accepts the help, look at what happens in verse 7.
Return unto thy rest, O my soul, for the Lord hath dealt bountifully with thee. This sounds like he's talking to himself in the mirror.
It is self-talk. It's a psychological intervention, really.
Why does he have to tell his soul to return to rest? I mean, where did it go?
It went to the panic room. Remember the pains of hell? His soul has been in a state of hyper-arousal, fight or flight.
Right.
Even though the crisis is technically over, his body and soul are still vibrating with adrenaline. He has to consciously command his nervous system to down-regulate, return to rest.
Because the reality has changed. He doesn't have to run anymore.
The reality is now bountiful, and verse 8 gives us the anatomy of that bounty. It's a trio.
Yeah, let's list these out because it really covers all the bases. For thou hast delivered my soul from death, mine eyes from tears, and my feet from falling.
It's a complete spectrum of human experience.
Yeah.
Soul from death, that's the existential, the spiritual rescue. That's the big picture. Eyes from tears, that's the emotional validation. God didn't just save his life, he cared about his grief. He cared about the trauma.
And feet from falling.
That is practical stability. It means he can walk forward without tripping.
So it's not just, okay, you're alive, now stop crying.
Nope.
It's total care. It addresses the trauma, the emotion, and the future capability to walk.
Yes.
And because of that three-part rescue, the writer says in verse 9, I will walk before the Lord in the land of the living.
The land of the living. That phrase just hits different when you've just been staring at the sorrows of death.
It's a statement of defiance against the grave. I'm here. I'm walking.
Yeah.
I'm present.
But, and I love that the text includes this, the writer isn't pretending he was some kind of saint through the whole process. We get a little confession in verse 11.
The outburst. I said in my haste, all men are liars.
We have all been there.
I feel like I say that every time I open social media or watch the news. But seriously, why is this in a holy text? Everyone is a liar. It sounds so bitter.
It is bitter, but context is king here. He said it in his haste. That word means alarm, panic, or flight. When the walls were closing in, who was there to help him?
Nobody.
Or at least it felt like nobody. Friends disappeared, promises were broken, doctors couldn't cure him. In the heat of trauma, our trust in humanity often collapses. We feel abandoned by everyone.
So he's admitting, I hit rock bottom and I just lashed out at the world.
Yes, but notice the contrast. All men are liars. Men failed me. But God heard my voice. The failure of people actually highlights the faithfulness of God.
Right.
It validates that even when our community fails us, the divine connection can hold.
That makes the writer so much more relatable to me. He's not sitting on a mountain meditating in perfect peace. He's panicked. He's cynical about people. He's crying. And God still saves him.
That's the simple aspect again. You don't have to be emotionally regulated to be saved. You just have to call.
Okay, so we've survived the crisis. We've had the panic attack and the rescue. Now the dust settles. And in verse 12, the writer asks the question that turns the whole psalm around.
What shall I render?
What shall I render unto the Lord for all his benefits toward me, basically? How do I pay this back?
It's a natural human instinct. Reciprocity. You save my life, I owe you. I need to, balance the ledger.
But that's a problem with God, right? I mean, what do you get the guy who has everything?
Right. You cannot engage in a transaction with the Creator. You have no currency that he needs. So the answer the psalmist gives in verse 13 is actually a paradox.
Verse 13. I will take the cup of salvation and call upon the name of the Lord.
Did you catch the verb?
I will take.
The question was, what shall I give? The answer is, I will take.
Wait, so the way to thank God is to ask for more?
In a sense, yes. The cup of salvation imagery here suggests a toast or a libation, but spiritually it means accepting the gift fully. You honor the giver by enjoying the gift.
Yeah.
You don't insult a host by trying to pay for the dinner they cooked you. You insult them by refusing to eat it.
That completely flips the script on religious duty. We usually think we need to work off our debt to God.
You can't work it off. You take the cup, you drink it down, you live in the reality of the rescue. That is the highest form of gratitude.
However, the text doesn't let us off the hook completely. It's
Yeah.
not just sitting around drinking cups of salvation. There is an action item here.
Yes, paying vows.
Verse 14. I will pay my vows unto the Lord now in the presence of all his people. And he repeats it in verse 18. This sounds serious.
It is. A vow in the ancient world was a binding promise, often made during the crisis. God, if you get me out of this, I will serve you forever.
So this is about integrity.
It's about public integrity. Notice he says, in the presence of all his people. He isn't just whispering thanks in his bedroom. He is going to the temple. He is making his gratitude visible.
It's putting your reputation on the line. I am one of the people God saved.
It's the difference between feeling grateful and being grateful. One is an emotion, the other is a witness.
Speaking of witness, we have to tackle verse 15. We cannot skip this. This is one of the most famous lines in the Bible. But if you don't know the context, it sounds incredibly strange.
Precious in the sight of the Lord is the death of his saints.
Okay, help me out here. Because precious usually means like cute or wonderful. Does God like it when we die?
That is the common fear. It sounds morbid, like God is eager to collect us. But we have to go back to the Hebrew word yakar.
Yakar, what's the nuance there?
It means heavy, rare, costly, carefully weighed. Think of a diamond or a very expensive piece of infrastructure. It's not precious like a puppy. It's precious like a massive investment.
So it's about value.
High value. The verse is saying that the death of one of God's people is a matter of immense significance to him. It is not cheap. It is not accident. It is not overlooked.
That changes the feeling completely. It's not that he enjoys the death, but that he is paying extreme attention to it.
The psalmist has just survived the sorrows of death. He knows that he could have died. And this verse is his realization that even if he had died, he wouldn't have been abandoned. God watches the exit just as closely as the entrance.
It's the ultimate security. Whether I live or die, I matter.
You matter. And that realization leads to the identity shift in verse 16. O Lord, truly I am thy servant. Thou hast loosed my bonds.
That's another paradox. I'm your servant and I'm free. Usually servants aren't free.
In this kingdom they are. Thou hast loosed my bonds. He is free from death, free from the trap. Because of that freedom, he voluntarily chooses to serve the liberator. It's not slavery, it's devotion. He serves because he wants to, not because he has to.
That brings us full circle. We went from sorrows of death to loose bonds. We went from panic to service.
It's a complete journey of the soul.
So here we are in 2026. Most of us aren't writing ancient Hebrew poetry. We're working jobs, raising kids, trying to pay rent. How do we take Psalm 116 and actually use it? What are the takeaways?
If we look at the source material, there are 4 distinct strategies we can pull from this to strengthen our trust in God right now.
Okay, let's break them down. Strategy number 1.
Strategy 1 is the habit of gratitude.
We hear this a lot. Keep a gratitude journal. Is that what you mean?
It's a bit deeper than just listing good things. It's about closing the loop on crisis. The psalmist didn't just survive, he wrote a song about it. When you get through a hard week or a health scare or a financial crunch, do you stop to acknowledge the rescue or do you just rush to the next problem?
I definitely rush. I'm on to the next fire immediately.
So the strategy is to stop. Take the cup, acknowledge the relief. It stabilizes your mental health and prevents that all men are liars. Cynicism from taking root. It proves to your brain that you are being taken care of.
Okay, stop and acknowledge. What is strategy number 2?
Strategy 2 is reframing the crisis.
How do we reframe the pains of hell?
By looking at the result the psalmist found, I was brought low and he helped me. Instead of asking, why is this happening to me? The source suggests we ask, what is this teaching me about dependency?
So it's about embracing that simple mindset.
Yes. Use the crisis to kill your ego. Realize you aren't the CEO of the universe. That vulnerability is actually where the strength comes from. The sooner you admit you can't fix it, the sooner you can receive the help.
I like that. Ego death as a strategy. What is number 3?
Strategy 3 is integrity in public faith. This is the paying vows part.
So keeping your word.
Yes.
Yeah.
If you make promises in the dark, keep them in the light. But also, don't be a secret agent for God. The psalmist did this in the presence of all his people.
That doesn't mean preaching on a street corner, though, right?
No, no. The courts of the Lord's house, for us, might be the office break room, our neighborhood, or our family dinner table. It just means crediting God for your stability. When someone asks how you got through a tough time, be honest. Say, I prayed, I had help. Be a public witness of the rescue.
That's powerful. Just honest attribution. And finally, strategy number 4.
Strategy 4 comes from that difficult verse about death. Deep value trust.
This is the mindset shift.
It is. You need to walk through life knowing that you are precious, weighty, significant to God. Your pain matters to Him. Your death matters to Him. Your life matters to Him.
It's the antidote to feeling insignificant.
If you really believe that God is paying attention to the details, you can walk in the land of the living with confidence. You don't have to look at your feet constantly to see if you're going to fall, because you know who is holding you.
That is the core of Psalm 116. It's not just a poem. It's a progression. From panic to prayer to rescue to gratitude to service.
And it's available to anyone who is willing to be simple enough to ask for it.
We covered a lot of ground today. We went from Sheol to the temple courts. If you want to dive deeper into these verses, or maybe grab a guide on how to actually structure that habit of gratitude we talked about, we have resources for you.
We do, and we'd love for you to join the community.
You can support this deep dive and get those practical tools by joining our mailing list. Just head over to bit.lypracticaladvice. That's bit.lypracticaladvice.
It's the best way to keep this conversation going.
Absolutely. We don't want this to just be information you heard once. We want it to be a tool you use. So, as you head back into your week, back into the land of the living, I want to leave you with one question. We talked about taking the cup, paying vows, and trusting God with the heavy stuff. Here is the question. How will you apply this information in your life? Here's the question. Think about that. Thanks for listening to The Deep Dive. We'll see you next time.